last time, but she's going to help us with the presentation this time. We are going to talk about paper, and then she's going to specifically focus on family photos. And I'm going to just remind people that we have put some things together to present, but this is supposed to be interactive. We know you have your own ideas. We're not pretending to be the authorities on anything. We're just sharing some ideas to get us started, and then we're counting on hearing from you as well. And I just wanted to remind people that thanks to Kathy Ashworth, we found out that there's a Crime Stoppers Shred and Med event this Saturday morning from 9 to noon. And Kathy, didn't you find out that it's sort of first come, first serve? You can do up to 2 boxes or 3 grocery bags.
Yeah, the thing says, it gives you that number, like you said, 2 Banker's boxes or 3 grocery bags or something. Yeah. But it says until the truck is full.
Yeah.
Now, so, I've never gone to a shredding where the truck was full, but I've always kind of gone in the morning.
Yeah.
So I moved my walking appointment back a half hour so that hopefully by a little after 10, I'm heading over there because I got old taxes I'm having shredded that I really don't want hanging around the house if I miss it.
Okay, so 9 to 1 is the time on that. And then I'm going to start by just telling a very brief story. It occurred to me that it'd be interesting to hear Judy's response to this, since Judy followed me as dean for a year when I left YBC. And the last 2 jobs that I've left, I had an administrative job at Edmonds and then at YBC. My habit of getting ready for things, meetings and events, is to put together a file, and I have everything in that file about the meeting, and it helps me get prepared. And then I take it with me and I write down notes. And when I get back, I'm pretty darn good at following up on things, but I never clean out the file. I just stick it in the file cabinet or in a pile somewhere, and it accumulates. So when I left my job, I had file drawer after file drawer of stuff. And I didn't want to throw it away, but it wasn't very easy for anybody else to use. And I doubted they really needed it, but I didn't want to part with it. So my secretary in both cases and I figured out a scheme where I put it in boxes, and we agreed we'd store it for a year. And if the new dean didn't ever ask for it or need it, then we throw it away and shred it. And that's what happened. I don't think you needed it, did you?
I was too overwhelmed to ask for your stuff.
Yeah, no, it would have been overwhelming. It would have been. And that's the reality. The new person has to create their own comprehension of the job and figure it out on their own. And it really, they can't do it the way you did it. So what I'm telling that is because I think a lot of us have systems, but they may break down in terms of paperwork. They may break down to a certain point. Mine breaks down because I never go back and get rid of it, you know? And so I think it's helpful to think about when our systems break down and why, and what we could do to remedy that. So keep that in mind as you listen to Deborah Ann talk about handling papers. She's going to start with papers, then Judy's going to talk about photos, and we'll take a break in between for people to give input. So Deborah Ann, you're on.
Okay. Well, Deborah Ann doesn't have a real problem with papers because Deborah Ann has just enough OCD to keep things like picked up. Yeah. But like probably Mary Lou's cabinets, there are things from your past that I've worked, as most of you know, helping people organize stuff. And in many cases, few cases, I have gone through their house while they were living and helped them get organized. But then I have been stuck going through their house when they have passed away. And in one instance, not Sally's house, but in one instance, I had to go through every book and every file in every cabinet because I found the title to the house filed under master's thesis. And I had people are notorious for using miscellaneous things as bookmarks. So when you're getting rid of books, please go through them it's very telling what people use for bookmarks. And sometimes you don't want those to go to the library or the secondhand store. But filing cabinets can become just absolute chaos. And, it's those, 17 versions of your master's thesis, none of which you need at this age. Not even the final, and it's documents from occupations or things that you put together that you just never got around to getting rid of. And they take up huge amounts of space in your house. Some of them don't even need to be shredded. They can just go into the recycling box because they really don't contain anything that is, secure information. They're just paper, and they've just become part of your life, kind of like some photo albums have. But it's okay to get rid of them, and it's kind of cathartic, but it's really difficult for a lot of people to do, and I understand that. But unless there's something that you really need to keep for posterity, somebody is really going to want it in the future, it's better to go ahead and get rid of it than to leave it for someone else. Taxes are another source of paperwork. I've always had my own business, and so I've kept not only my tax returns, but all of the receipts. And because my business was home-based, I kept all of the bills, part of the power bill, part of this bill, part of that bill. And so I keep a file with all of those in there. Well, now I don't have my own business anymore, and I really can get rid of all of those things.
How many
You
years
know?
do you have to save?
Well, I had always kept 10 years just for security purposes. And I have a filing system that is a file box, and I number it 0 to 9. And then when I put the next taxes in, I pull out those other ones and take them down to this annual shred thing. But now I think I think we figured out on the document that it was like 3 years that we had to keep them.
IRS says 3 years unless you have specific
Right.
things related to investment transactions or real estate sales or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, there's certain things that you need to keep papers for, but if you're just you and you don't have anything that the IRS would be interested in, most, like all of your regular bills that you pay every month, first off, they're going to be on your check register, so you could get a check statement that would say, you have your check statement that would tell you that you'd paid it. You could always go to the utilities website, and that would show that you paid it. You really don't need to keep them, and you don't even need to shred the whole document. You just tear off the top that has your personal information on it, and you can run that through your shredder. Or you can tear it into little pieces. And I found with a lot of things like that I get in the mail that are like that, you've been pre-approved for a credit card thing, that if I cut it or tear it into about 4 pieces and I put it in the bag with my recycled paper, when I recycle my paper, you have to undo the bag and you throw it into this big dumpster. It couldn't be more scattered and never put back together than 4 little pieces of paper in a huge dumpster.
Yeah.
So, and then it's going into something else. So, the rest of the bill doesn't have any security to it. So you don't have to shred reams and reams of paper. And that goes for, online prescription receipts, anything like that. Anything with your signature on it, tear off the signature and throw it in the shredder. But it's good to have security for things like, numbers that connect to your name that could be important. Documents, keep your originals in a safe deposit box or in a home safe. I keep copies in a file if somebody needs to find them, such as my 5 wishes and things like that. I have those in a non-secure place as a copy, simply because I would like somebody to find them if they were needed. But that's a very small file. But bills, once they're paid, you actually don't need to keep them at all. A lot of bills now are done virtually anyway, and you don't even get a copy of them. So you don't need to keep those. When I get bills that need to be paid, I keep my plan is very simple. I keep 2 files in my file drawer. One's marked pay by the 15th and one's paid by the end of the month. And I put the bills in there, and on 5 days before that date, I pull out that file and I pay all those bills. And then I don't have to worry about paying bills all month, and everything gets paid on time, and things don't wander around and you wonder where the bills went. But that's just my file. Everybody has their own ways of doing it. But as long as you have a system, it's when they wind up on the counter, the kitchen table, the desk, and then things don't have a place to be and get mislaid. Then, make sense of your filing cabinets so that things have a place, so you don't wind up with the title to the house in the same file with your master's thesis. Mark all your folders clearly, and just keep it simple, but try to eliminate the clutter in your filing cabinet so that someone else can find what's in your cabinet. But that's pretty much, my thoughts on handling paper, especially in filing cabinets, or on top of them, or on the floor in front of them, or wherever it winds up getting collected.
Or on the kitchen counter.
Or on the kitchen counter.
On the
Yep.
dining room table.
That too. Yes. Paper belongs in places. They're not the places you eat. They're not the places you sleep. No.
In your house.
Yes. Newspaper goes in a plastic bag to be recycled after you're done with it. It's not meant to be a barricade. Anybody have a system they want to share, or a thought they want to share about this? Does anyone have a different take on how long taxes should be kept? I mean, they used to say 7 years. First it was 10, then it was 7. And now on the IRS website, it says 3, but
Wow.
I think that's short.
I do too. I think that's pretty short. Yeah, Betty Ann?
One of my big problems is statements from like Fidelity or investment companies.
Yeah.
They come every month, and I carefully, punch them and put them in a notebook. And I'm beginning to realize how stupid that is, because, you just don't need them anymore. You can see it all online, or
That's right.
I probably shouldn't even be getting them.
I called my company, Betty Ann, and said, why are you even sending them? Well, we're required to. And I shred them every month.
Okay. That's probably good. Or at least at the end of the year, take the end of the year statement and shred all the ones that were every month or something.
Yeah.
I mean, all you have to do is read them and go, okay, I know what it is. Because we used to always keep all of those investment statements, and you had to keep them for years, but that was pre-internet.
Yeah, because you didn't used to know what you bought them for. Now that's not an issue. It tells
Right.
you. It's just crazy. But it's a lot of paper.
It
Yeah.
is.
Good. This is a slight diversion, but I have to tell you guys that today I got a scam email.
Mm.
And it said that it wasn't to me, I was copied on it. And it said, thank you for your purchase through iCloud/Apple. You'll be seeing it come out of your account in the next few days. You'll be seeing an amount of $1,499.99 coming out of your account in the next few
I
days.
knew a scam today.
So I wasn't very happy about that, obviously. So I decided to call the AARP scam line because I went to that tip-offs and rip-offs thing recently at the Washington AARP, and they said you could call, and it's open all the time. I called up. They said, yep. They said that that's the same as the Amazon one, but it's now it's an Apple one. They've changed it a little bit to make it look different. And they put a big enough amount of money to make you think, oh my God, I better do something about this. What if they really took $1,499 out? So he asked me, what are the phone numbers they said to go to? He wrote it all down. They're reporting it to the FTC. And he said, just take it off your computer and don't call the numbers. So anyway, I just wanted you to know that really works to call. If you get anything that you're worried about, call your state AARP scam line and report it, and they will take the information and you can feel reassured about it.
That's good.
Wow.
You were on security, and I just had to tell that little story. Sorry if
Yeah.
it took people off course.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well,
But the other papers I was telling Mary Lou that I'm getting mixed up about is all the statements from your health insurance companies.
I think it's her sister.
I'm just getting, yeah, I'm her sister. I just get so many of those statements, and I think I ought to save them, and then I'm getting all mixed up.
Yeah, well, if you're on Medicare and another insurance, you get the Medicare estimate of what they're covering, and then you get your other company's estimate of what they're covering, and then you get a bill. And if you don't keep track of them, it's hard to follow up on them.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that, yeah, that's one example of something you do need to keep for a year, maybe even two, because between Medicare and Kaiser, my things are so confusing. I just got something the other day. Evidently, North Star wasn't happy with what they got paid the first time. And so they billed a second time. And then, Kaiser's marking it duplicate bill, F off, this kind of stuff. And so it's actually, I have probably 4 times this year sent money to Memorial, actually very small amounts of money to Memorial when they sent me a bill saying that was, my share of something. And it wasn't a large share, it was a logical amount of money. And then several months later, they return it because Kaiser finally gets it through their system. And then Memorial has to refund my money because Kaiser paid them.
Mhm.
So on this thing I got the other day, that's a duplicate bill, I haven't taken the time to go back through my checkbook and see if I ever wrote a check for that amount. But all I'm seeing is that stuff is so crazy.
And there's a big lapse of time between when you have the thing
I mean,
and they pay it. Yeah.
yeah,
So, but
this
then you need a folder for each of those companies to keep those in, and with the
Yeah.
newest one on top. And then when you get billed, you need to look back at both of them and
And
see
I
if it makes
think
sense.
that takes a tremendous amount of sleuthing to figure it out. And when you call Kaiser, you have to like make sure you talk to the one person in Kaiser that understands Eastern Washington Kaiser account. And it's just, the only reason I don't spend more time on it than I do is because most of the time they're asking me for next to nothing. But, if they're asking me for lots of money, I'd just be going nuts with this.
So Kathy, that's the kind of problem I'm having. And I guess I've learned that paying the bills too fast is a big mistake.
Oh, yes, I'm slowing down
Yeah.
too.
Because
Right.
then they have to send you the check back or a different amount back. and
Oh,
it's-
yeah, one time I sent this money in because it seemed logical to me that was my amount. And Kaiser paid them so much quicker than usual that they literally sent my check back.
Oh,
Didn't even have time to put my check into their system before Kaiser paid them.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's just, it's a big mess, but if you want it, sometimes the only person that can figure it out is you, because and I mean, who the hell would want to call Medicare? That would take forever. But even they're very confused people. And oftentimes I'm the one that's saying, oh, you coded this for endometrial cancer. I go to this doctor for breast cancer. Oh, we need a different code. So I'm often the one, giving the piece of information that helps figure it out. And so I
She's
just,
a hero in her own history.
yeah,
Aren't we all?
I just don't throw that stuff away. But that creates another problem. And that is, okay, you got to pick some number. Should I throw everything away from 2018 backwards and keep forward? It's amazing how long these companies can continue fighting with each other. And as long as they're still fighting, best to have your own paperwork.
Yeah, I think the healthcare thing is a little bit different, especially as the things are going now. Now, I just want to let people know that Judy froze and disappeared, and she's trying to get back onto the screen. So
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, so we're going to hear from her when she comes back. But I was just going to say that what she's going to focus on is how you can take family photos and what you can do with them. And just so people in town know, maybe I could cover this before she comes back, since she hasn't emailed me that she said she was trying to get back on, but I haven't heard from her a second time. But Judy and I went to Photo House and Blue Ribbon, which are two places in town that digitize photos and VHS, the old videotapes that we used to have and put in our machines, and even films like this. I found this film of my wedding, which I think would be really fun to put on a DVD or a thumb drive. And both of these places will do that, but there's a shocking difference in cost. Blue Ribbon would charge me $8.50 to put this onto a thumb drive, but I'd also have to pay for the thumb drive, which might be another $4. Whereas if I took just this tape to Photo House, it would cost $55. But if I took 5 tapes, it would also cost $55. They send them out and they have the same price, whether it's for one or for multiple ones. Blue Ribbon, on the other hand, has graduated prices. The guy who works there, he told Judy that he usually charges, for example, to digitize one photo, 10 cents. And then 10 cents to 29 cents, depending on how many you have. So for 100 photos, it would be $10. Yeah. Yes. And for 1,000, it would be 100. And that $100 sounds like a lot of money, but for 1,000 photos digitized onto a thumb drive, that's a pretty good price. And he told her that for a VHS, to change an old videotape into a digitized form, he would charge, he would charge $19 for one, but if you had 4 of them, he'd only charge you $9 each. Whereas if you go to Photo House and you want to get a VHS changed to DVD, it's going to cost you $39.95 each. And it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks to do it. So there's a significant difference in cost. And I'm telling you that just because those are 2 places that we would recommend you looking at. I think Photo House has good quality stuff, but it sounds like they send theirs out. And the guy at Blue Ribbon has machines where he does it himself. And he's a young guy with a lot of energy, and he's got pretty good prices. So if you're not in Yakima, as Betty Ann isn't, it just goes to show, if you ever want to do this, it's worth shopping around a little bit. I wasn't expecting the prices to be that different in those 2 places at all. And they're the only ones left in town that we found that seem to be doing that. Used to be you could take things to Costco, but we're not anymore. Jean, do you know of another place?
We took a tape that had been in the kids' tape player,
Uh-huh.
the tiny one, and it was marked incorrectly. It turned out to be nothing we cared about. And they managed to save the tape and put it on a DVD. It wasn't the child's birthday party after all. They did a very nice job of it, and Costco doesn't do it. We had taken in a bunch of, I think VHS tapes some years ago when they had coupon specials and family ones, and transferred them all. I think they gave us DVDs and thumb drives at the same time, and they mailed them off and came back several weeks later. And
Wow.
it was not inexpensive. It was maybe $15, $20 each, but they were things that had been from the 1950s on the 1950s camera,
Wow.
made into VHS, and now again made into something that might be good another 20 years from now.
Yeah, that's worth it.
Well, this is a bummer. Judy is having really a hard time getting on. Chrissy, are you there? Chrissy? Here, okay, can you hear me, Chrissy? Can you try to help Judy get on? She said that what's happening is a circle just keeps going around. And
but-
then it says, unable to connect, check to make sure you're connected to a stable network that's not blocked by a firewall or proxy.
Tell her, I can call her.
You want to give her a call and just see if you can get her on?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to ad lib. I'll try to say a little bit about what I know she was going to talk about, since I talk. It won't be half as good, but if she comes on, we'll let her take over. Thank you, Chrissy.
Yeah, that's a good haircut.
That's too bad. Yeah. So
Oh, there it is.
oh, there she is. Oh,
Okay.
she's
My
here.
God, I went through a whole bunch of things, and
We're so glad you're back.
Hello.
Oh, perfect
I thought
time.
it was this computer, since I had it fixed. I thought it was screwed up again.
Oh, I'm so glad it worked. Okay.
I am too.
You're on. You're on. I just told them a little bit about the difference between Photo House and
Oh, okay,
Pivot.
good.
Prices.
Okay. When I quit teaching so much, a few years ago, I had extra time, so I was cleaning out my garage, and I found a whole bunch of stuff that needed to be digitized, because I knew it would all end up in the landfill when I was gone. And so I thought if I could digitize a bunch of it I have 3 kids, if I could digitize it for them. And also I have, counting all of the grandchildren of my parents, there's 10 kids. So my siblings' kids too wouldn't have access to a lot of stuff. So one of the first things I was looking at were boxes full of the old family photos. So I have a number of them, and my sister gave my niece another 5 or 6 boxes full that she has at her house. So I had all this stuff. There was a lot of other stuff in there besides photos, like letters, and my parents sat down when they were 60 and they wrote they called it Vi's story and Bob's story. They sat at a typewriter.
Ooh.
And they wrote, and each of these is like 30 some pages long. So they just sat at the typewriter and they started with their grandparents, and they wrote out just all the things they could remember about their grandparents, and then their parents, and then themselves when they were younger, then they didn't go into the current stuff. So this was really valuable because I had those. And so what I did was I gathered a whole bunch of stuff from the boxes that my niece had, brought them to my house, and put it together with what I had. And I took all these real old family photos down to Photo House, and she put them on a thumb drive for me. And I probably had about 30 of these old photos. So then I had also just my parents didn't do a great job of the family snapshots all the years when we were growing up. They didn't do a very good job of organizing anything. So that when my mom moved into the living care, she just had boxes of just loose photos. So it was just kind of like going through and sorting them out. But at any rate, so I had a lot of family photos. And so what I decided to do was to make it into a book that I could then have enough copies made for all 10 of my parents' grandchildren. And so this is the book I ended up with, and it's pretty good size, but it's got stories and these old photos.
Wow.
And I knew that the kids would not be interested in just a rogues gallery of faces with birth and death dates. That was not going to be interesting to anybody. So I had to have stories for all these people. So I spent a lot of time going through this stuff. And what I did was I have a whiteboard because I've been tutoring biology students on Zoom. So I have 2 whiteboards. But at any rate, you don't need to really read all of this. But so what I decided to do was to make a genealogy book that I could give to all 10 of my parents' grandchildren. And so I called it The Immigrants. And there's 2 sides of the family. So my mom's a Harrington and my dad's a Kjellman. And so what I have is I have 8 great grandparents. And so I put the letter of the country they came from. So on my dad's side, I've got 3 Swedes and 1 Norwegian. And on my mom's side, I've got 3 English and 1 Irish. So I've got these 2 sides of the family. So there's these 8 great grandparents. And then of course there's 4 grandparents and then my 2 parents. So there's 14 people on here that I want to talk about in this book. So at first I was thinking, oh, I should just probably do it by generation. And then I thought, no, it's going to get too confusing with some of these Swedes being, over here with these English people. And so I decided I would just do the first half of the book about my dad. So I started with his grandparents, my great grandparents. So the people in the book are in this order: 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I go down to the next generation, 5, 6, and then 7 is my dad. So I talk about these 7 people in the first half of the book, because I thought it would be easier for the kids to follow along if it's just this side
going
of
to
the
be
family.
interesting.
And then I get to the middle
Who's
of the
going to be
book.
interested in all that stuff?
Huh? I didn't hear what you said.
Just let it run. That's the nice thing about not being in the picture.
Oh, well.
Okay.
And then in the middle of the book, then I start on my mom's side of the family. So I start with my great grandparents on that side, and then the grandparents, and then my mom. And then I pretty much ended the book. It wasn't a book about us. I didn't talk about us 3 children or even the next generation down. I just pretty much ended it with my mom and my dad when they met, and then just a couple of pages about their early years. And then that was it. So what I did was I went through Shutterfly because I had a younger friend that went through it with me practicing one day and showed me how to use it. And that was pretty easy. So, but I had to have all these photos digitized in order to do that. So that was my first project. Was I did this family genealogy book. I sent it to, I ordered 15 copies, and this book on Shutterfly, what you do is you get your book all ready to go, and then you wait until they have half price sales for free shipping, or both at the same time, which I lucked out on. I got free shipping and half price. So nobody just makes their book and then the day they finish it, they just order it, because then you could end up with full price. So these were like $165 books. Well, I got them for 80 bucks. And so I still had to buy 15 of them because I really wanted every one of the grandchildren to have it. And then of course I had one for my mom and one for my sister. And then I sent a couple to some cousins that I'm still close to. And one kind of neat thing is, on my mom's side of the family, I'm in contact still with a couple of cousins. Well, I sent them the book and they said, oh, is there a way that Shutterfly would let me have our side of the family's half of your book, and then I could just delete the other side, like they're not related to the Kjellmans, so could I delete all that Kjellman stuff and then add my other parent on there, their family history, so they wouldn't have to redo everything I had already done. And so I asked Shutterfly and they said, oh, sure. So I just gave permission to Shutterfly to let those cousins have the book digitally. They
Uh-huh.
already had their paper copy, but so then they can actually go through and change anything they want. They can delete the side of the family they're not related to and add their own other side. And so
That's
that's
great.
kind of a cool little feature.
Mhm.
So anyway, this was the genealogy book that I mailed out to all of these grandchildren.
That's great.
Mhm.
Okay, then the next thing I did is that one of the cousins that was reading this book, this is pretty interesting. I never expected this to happen. One of the cousins that was reading this book saw this page where I'm just gonna find it here. No, I probably can't find it. Anyway, I have a page where I just talk about my dad, and I talk about when he was in World War II over in Belgium and Germany. And I listed his 3rd Armored Divisions, all these various, groups he was in, down to what company he was in. Well, this one cousin of mine is real good with the computer, and he contacted me and he said, I went through the US government and I found the after action reports of your dad's company from the time they were in Belgium all the way through Germany to Berlin. And he said it's like 300 pages long, but he had it and he sent it to me.
Hmm.
And so what I could do then was, we knew a little bit about my dad in World War II, and I had some pictures and some memorabilia and stuff, but we didn't know on a daily basis where they were. So this thing told me every single day where my dad was. So what I did was, I thought, well, the kids have to know all of this stuff too. So I made a book about my dad in World War II using that information. So I didn't want to go the $160 price tag route for this. So I just went down to Abbott's Printing in Yakima, which is down by the old Bi-Mart in that area. And for $3.50 each, I got 30 copies of this book about my dad in World War II. So that's a really cool thing. So I mailed it to all the kids again. And like someone was saying about some kid, Deborah Ann was talking about some kid being able to use the information that she had sent. After I sent this World War II book, my niece in Olympia called me and she said, my daughter has an assignment where they're supposed to look up somebody that was in World War II and they're supposed to give a report to their class. So she said, this was perfect. So she used her, what would it be, her great grandpa, his story. So she sat and just studied this thing and made her report to her class based on this. But, I think the kids wouldn't have had a clue if I wouldn't have gotten that after action report, because I wouldn't have known where to even put him through all those months.
Yeah.
We just had a bunch of stories and things. And then what I did was I had, like, my dad shot the lock off of a concentration camp at Nordhausen. And so when they came into the concentration camp, there were cameras and film, just black and white cameras and film in the basement of a building. So they all went around taking pictures. So I've got pictures taken. This is my dad taking the day at the concentration camp, but I've got all these horrible concentration camp photos too that I put in here because he brought those home with him.
Mhm.
And when I was at the Holocaust Museum in DC a few years ago, I showed them this. And so they wanted it. So I've given a copy of this to the Holocaust Museum because of the concentration camp that's in here. And then I also sent one to the World War II Museum, which is down in New Orleans. It's kind of funny that it's in New Orleans, not in Washington, D.C., but that's where it is. And so I asked them if they would want a copy, and they said they did. So I mailed them one too.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. We've got, his whole story now all together. And so from the after action reports, I just took, I would lump days. I wouldn't say every single day that he was there, but I kind of lumped it together because I knew where he was and what they were doing. Because it would tell you how many guys got killed, who were they shooting at, or where they were, what happened in a particular town. So it's really interesting. I didn't even know they had those.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh.
Judy, did they end up accepting that gun you offered them?
What?
Remember you told me that you told them you had the gun that he shot the lock off with and that they needed.
Oh, I never had the gun.
Oh,
I have a thing that saved his life that was some sort of a clip from a gun that he had in his pocket. I've got it in a shadow box downstairs, and a bullet hit it, and it's got a big dent in it, and it would have gone into his chest. No, I never had anything about the gun.
okay, I
Yeah.
missed.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
But
That's
the other neat thing I had was that the soldiers, after the war, everybody that was in Europe, at least, they probably did that for the Pacific too, but a great big book, big thick book about everything that happened in Europe with pictures. And so I was able to lift a few pictures out of that book to put in here because it was the exact same thing that where he was. So that really helped me to have that too. So I had a few other sources that I could use to put that book together. So that was my second project. Then as I began retiring in a kind of a slow, dribbly way, I started going on international trips in 2000. And I ended up with lots of these big, bulky scrapbooks. You probably have many of these, okay? So I ended up with a bunch of those, and then a bunch of trips that just hadn't been put into any sort of organized form yet. So what I did then was I started, since I had learned to use Shutterfly when I made that genealogy book, then I started just converting those old style scrapbooks to just these kind of books. And so I figure when I'm sitting in the retirement home, I would rather have, a little stack of these to take with me to remember my trips than to try to haul those great big heavy scrapbooks around with me. And I just think this is going to help. But the trouble is I have three books done and there were 12 trips. So I've got a lot of work left to do. And for these books, I got my digital camera in 2009. So half the trips, I'm going to have to scan the photos on my printer. I'm going to have to scan the pictures myself. But after 2009, they're all digital. So that'll make it easier. And then the last thing I did was I have 12 boxes like this sitting out in my garage. And what they're full of, you recognize these little envelopes. They're full. Some of them are from Photo House. Some of them are from Costco. And I totaled up approximately in these 12 boxes, there are about 6,000 photos. And they're all 4x6s. That's nice. They're the same size. They fit in these boxes. And then I just have them labeled by what year they are. Well, and I got to looking at all of those and I thought, well, those will for sure go to the landfill. And most of that stuff isn't the old generations back stuff. This is just stuff from when my kids were little and stuff. Pictures, mostly pictures that I took. So what I decided to do for Christmas, I think this was 2018 Christmas, I decided that I would go through every single envelope in all 12 boxes and I would pick out just the best photos. Because you remember, when we weren't digital, you couldn't delete anything. So you took six versions of each picture, hoping you'd get one good one. So I wasn't going to have to scan 6,000 photos. So I actually got it down to 1,200. And I sat here in my little room here and I scanned, 1,200 photos from my pictures, though they're all color, color 4x6 prints. And so then what I sent the kids for Christmas then, each one of my kids got a thumb drive with 1,200 photos on it. So I just went to Best Buy. I was either, what is it, Office Max and Best Buy that are right together out there on South First.
Office Depot.
Is it Office Depot? I forget what they're called.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went there and I said, I have 1,200 photos that need to go on a single thumb drive. Will you tell me what size thumb drive to buy? Because I figured that might be, big. Mm-hmm. And so then he just said, oh yeah, this will hold 1,200 photos. And so he just sold me 3 of them. So I had it on my desktop here. I had it in a folder. And so then all I had to do was drag the folder onto each of these 3 So each kid got 1,200 photos. And I even put the old family photos that Photo House had done for me that I used for my genealogy book. They're on here too. And also my dad's World War II book photos are here too. So they've got those 2 books that I sent them. Also, they've got the photos digitally here, along with all those other photos that I took out of those boxes. So this is actually, and the other thing I did, I thought, they're going to lose this thumb drive. I'm going to send this to them for Christmas, and it's going to go in a drawer somewhere, and they're going to lose it. So I thought, okay, what can I do to keep these kids from losing this thumb drive with all these great pictures on there? And so I went to one of the craft stores, and they sell these cute little boxes. I guess people probably paint them and decorate them, and they have a hinge and a little lid that opens. And so I bought 3 of these cute little wooden boxes, and I lined them with that kind of foam like we used to have in jewelry boxes. Remember that kind of cottony stuff? So I lined them with that, put the thing in, and then I covered up the lid. And then on top, I bought some letter stickers, and I wrote family photos on it. So I thought, well, at least that's less likely to get lost in a drawer than just the thumb drive. So I'm hoping they're all still there. But my son texted me a few weeks ago, and he said, well, he's a transportation planner, and he lives in Las Vegas. And he said, there's a thing at work where we're all supposed to turn in pictures of ourselves when we were in college. And so I of course, I'm the one that gets contacted to find the pictures. And I said, remember the thumb drive? Yeah. I said, okay. What I had done when I put the pictures into the folders for the thumb drive is that on every photo, I put a title, and I put the year first, and then I put the first initial of the kid. So Andrew would be A, Jenny was J, and Mick was M. So I would put the year, then the kids' initials. And if all 3 kids were there, I'd put all 3 initials. And then I would write where they were, what it was it Disneyland or what it was. So then when you drag your photos into into folders, they go in order by year, and then they go in order by the letter. So that meant that for any given year, a kid could go right to the year, and then like Andrew, he's A, his will be first. He'll find all the photos of him that year. So I explained this to all of them on a letter that I sent. But so I said, yeah, just go to the years you were in college, go to that folder that's got that year on it, and there'll be Andrew's photos, and you're going to find yourself, and that way you can pick what you want. So this actually has been useful. And I've seen on Facebook posts, I've seen pictures that have come off of here from all 3 of them. I've seen them on there where they didn't have those photos before. So they've actually used these and looked in there and gotten pictures off. So that's great. Yeah. So that's actually my 5 projects, and I'm tired, and I'm really glad that I got all of that done, and I don't have to do it again.
We're all exhausted.
It was exhausting.
That's amazing. But
I think I had more energy then than I do now, because I'm real glad it's done.
Judy, let me just show people really quickly. I did some small books like this, which are, I just looked, these are also Shutterfly books. They're a lot less expensive, but when I went hiking with some friends in Maine. So I made a little book from the pictures there. And then I have one from when I went to my brother's when he was closing down his house and moving into an apartment or to a condo. He had all these old pictures, so I put them all in a book and sent it to the family. But these are not expensive, not half as expensive as what Judy did, and they're just shorter. But they are a handy way to have photos. And I just went back onto Shutterfly today to see and they store them there for you.
Yeah,
so
they're there forever.
Yeah, I can go back there. Now, what they aren't doing, they're not making small ones like this anymore. You can't do a little one. They're probably getting more money from big ones, but they'll help you. They'll show you how to turn it into a bigger book.
Yeah.
So I think it's now going to be more maybe this size, 8.5 by 11 or half.
Well, yeah, and they'll even once you're a customer, then I get these emails like free soft cover book.
Yeah.
So I can just go in. I've done that several times. Go in and take one grandchild and make a quick book of the pictures I have of that kid. Say a little bit, and then send it off to them, and it was totally free.
That's great.
So, I mean, you can make little quick things like that too, where you
Mhm.
don't have to do a whole lot of
Yeah.
work to get
You know,
it.
I think the books are a good idea. One thing I find is, of course, we all have a million photos on our phones now. But I like having something you can actually look at. Sometimes I go back to old scrapbooks and I'd much rather look at those. So it's kind of nice to have something in your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like the Shutterfly book idea, because they're
Yeah.
not as big and bulky as an old scrapbook, but
Yeah.
they've got the pictures and they've got the words in there too.
Yeah, you can put words in and you can talk about stuff.
Yeah.
That's the nice part about
Yeah.
it.
That's
The
good.
guy at
They're not hard to do. They really aren't that hard to do.
no, they're not. I was talking to the guy at Blue Ribbon. He's real chatty, so plan to spend some time when you go in there. Anyway, I was telling him about making my genealogy book, and that my parents had written those little documents about themselves when they were in their early 60s. And I said, you know, we really all should do that.
Yeah.
I'm way over 60 and I've not sat down and done that and written all this stuff about what I did.
You should do that.
I
We
need to
should
do that.
like this.
Well, then what he said was, well, with our phones these days, what we ought to do is we all ought to just be making videos of ourselves talking rather than typing it up. And that's another idea.
Huh.
What I guess what would be really good is to have a series of questions and have somebody interview you. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Have somebody ask you questions, and that would trigger your thoughts, and then you could answer the questions, and then they'd have you on videotape that could be then given to kids too.
Let's work on that, Judy. Let's try to develop a series of questions that people could use as a starting point for recording their family history. We
Oh,
should.
I'm trying to
Almost
remember.
100 and-
There was a group that came to Horizon House that did that, and I can't remember. They had excellent questions. I'll try to research that. It was
Well,
really
Okay,
cool.
research it
You know,
too.
Heidi Shaw's
Yeah.
on a group that interviews World War II soldiers,
Mhm.
and they have a bunch of questions, and they're filming them too, and they're asking them questions. Of course, maybe they're more war related stuff.
Yeah.
They're asking them a bunch of questions.
You know, my Betty Ann and I are Zooming with our brother, and we've been picking a theme like tell your favorite story about our dad or tell your favorite story about our mom. I was thinking if all of us sat down and remembered what we did, we all remember different things.
Right.
You do remember different things from siblings. It's really fascinating. So it'd be fun to have those things. Those
Right.
questions would be answered differently by different sibs.
Because the cool stories and the funny little things that you would say on a video like that are probably something you wouldn't sit and write paragraphs about, and
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
Well-
or you'd forget about it.
Just last summer, my dad, he hasn't talked much. He's on here, he's listening. He didn't talk much about Korean War and the things that he just on the patio started talking about some of that. And I started videotaping, on my phone.
Yeah.
And I sent
yeah.
that to all the siblings and the grandkids through a private thing, and they all loved it because you
Yeah.
didn't know about some of that stuff. So yeah, but there's some actual, questions. My mom and I were talking about that recently too. So I don't know.
Okay.
Well,
Another interest group.
we had the same thing happen last summer. That somebody, my sister-in-law's father was in the Vietnam War, and he started talking out on the patio about the war and things he remembered. And she was flabbergasted. She'd never heard most of these stories.
Mhm.
It is interesting.
Jean, were you going to say something?
Yeah, StoryCorps,
Yeah.
which I hear, I occasionally on NPR were here a couple, 3 years ago and recorded stories. They're going to, every Thanksgiving time, they have a project encouraging people to record stories at time. And I was just gonna look because I was
Yeah, and
doing
tell their
something,
grandkids, right? Yeah,
setting Ray's computer up. I think that on their website, we can find story starters
yes, you're right, Jean.
different situations, elderly people or veterans or children's. But definitely at the Thanksgiving time, they encourage people to talk to family members, and at Veterans Day, they have questions to talk to service members.
And they might even have an app that you can download and use. So it
I-
is, don't you think, Jean? I think that's
They
what.
did, they did last year because of distancing.
Me too.
Archive, discover, about.
I have their app too. I think you're right. I think there is some, I'll look into that.
Yeah.
I'd say don't wait too long if you still have parents around. My mom's almost 102, and when she sometimes is telling me stories, she's got totally the wrong location, the wrong years. I mean, she's mixing stuff up a lot more and kind of making things up.
Yeah,
So I wish we'd have done this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree. And it's also really when you, I don't know about the rest of you, but it's easy to think of, gosh, I wish I had asked my mom this at the time, you know, and that's the strength of your giving this stuff to your kids, Judy. At the time, you don't know what to ask your parents. So we kind of have to take the lead in a way of
Mhm.
deciding some things that might be of interest, even if we're wrong, you know, it's
Yeah.
figuring it out. Yeah.
Oh, it does. It's got, you're right. They've got the app. They've got the StoryCorps DIY. How to do
DIY.
it. Great Thanksgiving listen and great questions after ask questions. I'm not gonna read, but they've got all sorts of things.
Okay. Thanks, Jean. That's a great idea. I'd totally forgotten about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's always good to borrow other people's ideas.
absolutely. That's good.
And I think we need to remember that it's not just our parents who are losing contact with things, you know, how many of our own friends in our own generation are getting Parkinson's and just generally having trouble remembering whether this is Wednesday or Thursday, you know, without looking at the calendar. You know, we ourselves are
Changing. Yes.
changing, and you know,
Yeah,
we
our
don't know
kids should
which
be
day it's
interviewing
going to be
us.
that we're not going to remember all the details, and maybe it already has happened. you
Yeah.
know?
So, but Judy, when you told me about your parents' stories, the part I really liked was they just sat down and did it. They didn't try to make it be perfect. I think sometimes we wait and wait till we think it's the right time, but we should just do
It's
it.
not gonna be some, book that's gonna be sold. It's
Yeah,
just.
it doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but the longer we wait, the less accurate it'll be probably. And we
You
can
already
always
talked-
do
Did
that.
you already talk about these?
Yeah, go ahead. Good. I mentioned it, but go ahead and say again.
Well, I had some of these done at Blue Ribbon years ago before the current owner was there. And then Mary Lou asked about it down at Photo House. And so we
Yeah.
found out that the price was a lot cheaper at Blue Ribbon. And he'll put several of these onto one thumb drive or a DVD if you want more than one on the same disc or thumb drive. Or he'll do them separately, but the more you have him do, the cheaper they are. So what was it? Anywhere from $19 if you only had one to, if you had 15 of these, $6 a piece. So he gives you a break the more of them you have. He does them right there in his office.
Yeah, and whereas Photo House, they send them out and it takes 3 to 4 weeks. And,
Right.
again, I have no interest in dumping on Photo House at all, but there is a price difference. That's the reality of it. And so if that's important to you, I mean, if you think about how much time Judy spent digitizing 1,200 photos, and if you could do that for $100, approximately $100, that would be worth doing,
Worth it, yeah.
rather than sitting there and digitizing every one of them on your printer. I mean, if you like doing it, great, but it'd be nice to have an option. I mean, that would be worth doing, I would think. And then you could organize them and name them any way you wanted. I like your system, Judy. That's
That system of putting the year and the name of the kid or who, and then what it is, I think that's really helpful because you know how intimidating it is to just open up a folder, even if you know that it's like 1982 to 1997 or whatever. If you just see all these images and you don't know what anything is or what year they are or anything, it's just confusing. So
Yeah.
when you dump them into that folder, it just organizes them by year and it makes it so much easier to find
It's a
things.
great
Yeah.
idea.
It's great. Well,
That's
good. Well, this has been fantastic. Judy, thanks. Those projects are really helpful to see. And
questions. Anybody have questions before we?
and thanks to Jean for thinking about the StoryCorps thing.
Yes.
Chrissy, if you have any more info on that, you could send it out to the people who are on here.
Oh, I just wrote StoryCorps in the search box.
Oh, good.
Nothing very elegant.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. Any other questions? I think what I like about the way Deb Ann organized her handling papers is, it helped me identify what goes wrong with my process. I mean, I think most of us have we wouldn't have survived this long if we didn't have some way of organizing our stuff. But is it really working for us? That's the question. And I think I can laugh at myself because the reason I do it the way I do is I'm always thinking of the next project. I don't really want to focus on putting away the last project. I like to go on to the next one and be prepared for that. So, it's just a question of thinking, okay, how could I make it an interesting project the way, Judy, you did with your photos to start remedying that flaw in my system. And one of the ways I'm motivating myself, I think Kathy's doing this too, is to think in terms of, well, there's 2 shredding things a year. There's one in October and one in April. What's my goal going to be for, how many things can I get rid of before the next shredding thing? That's a good way to go. So
I think unlimited amounts of medicine, and you don't even have to take the labels off the bottles too.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Good.
And my thought to Betty Ann is, a lot of things that we get from our healthcare companies or our investment companies are information to you. And then once you've read them, it's like, my investment that tells me every month how much money I have in that investment. It's like, okay, fine, I read it. That's all I needed to know. And then it goes through the shredder.
Well, the other thing, Betty Ann, on the healthcare stuff that I was going to tell you about, when I get my healthcare stuff, the vital information is on the first front and back and maybe the 3rd page. And then there's 2 or 3 more pages of explanations or, in other words, paper.
In Chinese.
Yeah.
The 3 pages are all other languages.
Yeah, they have all these different languages, or they have, backup or explanations of how you do this or that. So you can, even if you need to keep them, you can probably reduce the paper in half before you file and still have the key information. But I think Kathy's point, I think you missed this, Judy, when you were gone, but Kathy was pointing out that it takes a while to resolve a lot of healthcare bills. So they might be needed to be kept longer than some other things, because, if you have 2 kinds of coverage, they're disagreeing with each other and they're crossing purposes. And hopefully that doesn't work that way most of the time. But I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm getting more skeptical, not less skeptical, about how our healthcare system is working. And I just think if we need to be able to refer to those things, we should keep them longer.
Yeah, and I have Medicare and a traditional Medicare supplement, and I never have to give it a single thought.
Okay.
It goes through seamlessly, and the supplement pays all of it. And since they're in the same system, they don't fight with each other.
Yeah.
Wow.
I forgot to mention slides. Does anybody still have slides?
Well, I was just gonna say, and
Okay.
and we were looking up, what we could do at home. Buying a whole gadget and doing it ourselves.
That's expensive.
But I don't know if so, and then you can make
Well, they will take, they said, I've got some of these slides that are big ones like
Wow.
this.
oh wow.
These are from a pretty fancy camera. And then I've got little boxes like this that are, they're 2. And they said, no matter what the size, it's the same as digitizing a photo. It's 10 cents each. And so, I mean,
That was Blue Ribbon.
Yeah, Blue Ribbon.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it depends how many you have. It could be 10 to
Hey,
20.
Go, folks. Bye.
Good to see you,
Hi,
Kathy.
Kathy.
Great. Yeah, so slides are also, they're just negatives, basically. So they,
Yeah.
they can handle them even easier than
negatives.
photos, I think.
Yeah.
I did that, and I had mine in all of them in carousels. You know how big those boxes were?
Yeah.
Oh, it was so nice to throw all those carousels out on a yard sale.
Mhm.
I don't know whatever happened to them, but it was nice to get those slides out of there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you got yours digitized too?
I did mine at Costco, but of course they went out of the photo business now. They're not doing that anymore.
That's too
But
bad. Yeah.
the guy at Blue Ribbon will.
Yeah.
I don't know about Photo House if they do slides or not.
I think they do, but I think again, they're more expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, look, this has been great. And thanks, Deborah Ann, and thanks, Judy. And thanks everybody for coming. It's been fun. And thanks, Jean. We're glad you joined us too. And
Oh, thank you.
yeah,
Good to see you people.
Yeah.
Inga and Dick.
Yeah. Inge and Dick, glad you're
Your
there.
ceiling joined us.
We see your
Mike.
ceiling. We're getting
Mike.
comfortable with your ceiling.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, Mike. Bye. Bye, Chrissy.
We're gonna go turn football on.
Okay. Oh boy.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll see you later. Bye, Inga.